Vivian's heart thundered as Brittany's mocking smile froze the platinum camellia watch behind its glass prison. Her birthday gift turned symbol of every unspoken prejudice. The manager's clipped command to step outside echoed louder than the crystal chandeliers stripping her of dignity under the scrutiny of a luxury crowd. It wasn't until the door slammed behind her that she realized this wasn't just about a watch. It was a battleground for her very worth. Hi, everyone. Today we're stepping into a world where silent judgments can echo louder than words, and where standing tall with quiet grace might just be the most powerful form of resistance. Imagine walking into a store hoping to buy a gift for someone you love, a place lined with chandeliers, soft carpets, and glass counters glowing with luxury. But before you even speak, the looks begin, the whispers follow, and suddenly you're not a person anymore. You're a question mark, an outsider. This could happen to anyone, even you. So before we dive into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Let's begin. The sun poured golden light across Rodeo Drive that afternoon, bouncing off polished storefronts and warming the air with that sweet blend of jasmine from manicured planters and the faint hint of designer perfumes wafting from open boutique doors. It was the kind of day that made everything seem crisp, expensive, and perfectly arranged. But even the most elegant setting can hold hidden thorns. Vivian Dorsey moved with the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to prove herself. At 46, she wore her natural hair pulled back in a soft twist, simple pearl studs in her ears, and a crisp linen blouse that caught the breeze as she walked. Her embroidered canvas tote adorned with a single camellia pin, her favorite flower hung gently at her side. She wasn't dressed to impress. She was dressed to feel like herself. Her husband, Ethan, would have smiled at that. He always said her presence calmed a room before her words even entered it. Vivian had chosen this moment with care. The boutique Élan et Lumière was famous for its rare vintage collections. Today, tucked behind one of its velvet-lined cases, was a watch she'd been reading about for weeks, a platinum masterpiece engraved with a camellia motif from the 1930s. Ethan loved watches, not for their price, but for their craftsmanship, the stories they carried through time. And Vivian loved flowers. The idea of blending both a gift that told their story without words felt perfect. As she stepped through the glass doors, the boutique's air shifted. The inside was cool scented with something floral and sharp like gardenia steeped in money. A few heads turned. A couple in tailored resort wear paused mid-conversation to glance her way. A young woman in heels lowered her sunglasses just enough to assess her. Vivian felt the weight of their eyes, but she smiled politely and moved forward, letting her gaze drift over the soft, glowing cases. Behind the main counter, Brittany Lang typed something onto a tablet. She didn't look up right away. Brittany, dressed head to toe in sleek black with manicured nails that gleamed like lacquer, and a voice as smooth as the silk scarf around her neck, finally raised her head. Yes, she said, not unkindly, but without the warmth she'd just used with the blonde woman she'd been helping. Vivian met her gaze with steady kindness. Hi, I'd like to see the camellia engraved platinum piece in your vintage collection, please. I believe it's a 1937 edition. Brittany blinked. For a moment, the polite veneer cracked. That one, she said, drawing out the words. Are you sure you meant that one? Vivian's smile didn't waver. Yes, that one. Brittany looked her up and down the soft sneakers, the natural face, the lack of labels, then slowly set down her tablet. Of course, just one moment. Vivian stood quietly, letting her eyes wander across the shop. The luxury here wasn't loud. It was in the textures, the hush, the way every object seemed to glow under discreet spotlights. But under that calm was a tension she knew all too well. She'd felt it in corporate boardrooms and fundraising galas and the stares of new neighbors. Not hate, not quite, but disbelief, doubt, the question unspoken but clear. What are you doing here? Brittany returned empty-handed, but joined by someone else. A tall man in his mid-40s with slick dark hair and an immaculately tailored suit, Dorian Vale, the store manager. Hello, Dorian said with the kind of smile that was almost, but not quite genuine. I understand you're interested in one of our more exclusive pieces. Vivian nodded, her voice warm and even. Yes, I'm here to purchase it as a birthday gift for my husband. Dorian's eyes flicked to her tote her plain shoes. He made a show of glancing back at Brittany. Well, he said carefully, items in that range typically require pre-clearance. We've had some unfortunate misunderstandings before. Vivian's brows lifted slightly. Pre-clearance, I wasn't aware that was your policy. Brittany spoke up quickly, her tone brittle. It's not a policy exactly, it's more of a guideline. To ensure serious buyers receive the appropriate level of service. We wouldn't want anyone to feel disappointed. Vivian's jaw tightened just a breath. I'd still like to see the watch. Dorian stepped forward, lowering his voice. Ma'am, this boutique strives to offer a curated experience. If you're unsure about the pricing, we'd be happy to direct you to our newer collections. More accessible. Fresh arrivals. The message was clear. This isn't for you. It never was. Vivian felt the heat rise in her chest, but she stayed composed. I asked to see one specific piece. Dorian's tone grew more clipped. We reserve the right to determine client fit for certain legacy pieces, and based on, well, today, it might be best if you considered other options. Behind her, someone chuckled. A sharp, quiet snicker from a younger man holding a glass of sparkling water. Whispers rippled outward. A woman near the fragrance counter pulled out her phone. Vivian's heart thudded, not from shame, from fury. Dorian gave a polite half-bow motion toward the door. If you'd like to return with someone from your party who can assist, we'd be happy to help then. Vivian didn't move, not for a long moment. Then she nodded, her lips pressed tightly together, and walked toward the door. The sound of her sneakers against the marble floor was the only sound in the room. Outside, the sun still glowed, but it no longer felt warm. Vivian stepped onto the sun-drenched sidewalk, the boutique's heavy glass doors closing behind her, with a hushed finality that felt more like a judgment than a farewell. The bright Los Angeles sky had not dimmed, but something inside her had. The warmth she'd carried into that store, the excitement of finding the perfect birthday gift, the anticipation of seeing Ethan's reaction, had been replaced by a cold, invisible weight pressing down on her chest. She stood still for a moment, letting the buzz of Rodeo Drive pass around her. Tourists snapping photos of palm trees, a mother scolding her teenage daughter for spending too long in one store, a valet whistling as he jogged toward a waiting Rolls-Royce. The world kept moving as if nothing had happened. But inside Vivian, something had cracked. She walked slowly down the block and stopped near a camellia bush in full bloom. Its soft pink petals seemed to glow against the deep green leaves, delicate but resilient. She looked at them closely, tracing their lines with her eyes, and thought of her grandmother's garden in Georgia. The camellias always bloomed just after the frost, when everything else was still bare. They'd taught her that beauty and strength can live in the same body. She took a deep breath. Then another. Are you okay? A voice said beside her, gentle but firm. Vivian turned slightly to see a woman with silver-streaked hair, large sunglasses, and the unmistakable presence of someone used to both stages and scrutiny. Nina Rosenthal. Vivian recognized her instantly, a celebrated theater actress known for her no-nonsense roles and poignant monologues. Nina pulled off her sunglasses, revealing eyes full of concern and quiet fury. I saw what they did to you in there, Nina said, her voice low and measured. It was disgusting. Vivian blinked, unsure of how to respond. Nina continued, I know places like that. Places where the glass is polished but the judgment is sharp. You didn't deserve that. Nobody does. A lump formed in Vivian's throat. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For a few seconds they stood side by side, watching bees drift between blossoms. Thank you, Vivian, finally whispered. Before Nina could respond, the low hum of an engine reached their ears. A matte black SUV pulled to the curb. The passenger door opened, and Ethan Dorsey stepped out. He moved with the quiet confidence of a man who never needed to raise his voice. Tall, broad-shouldered, gray at the temples, but still strong in his stride. His suit was understated, but tailored to perfection. A single camellia-shaped lapel pin gleamed against the fabric, catching the sunlight like a signal. Vivian's face shifted as she saw him, relief, tension, love, and shame all crashing into one another. Ethan crossed the sidewalk in 3 long steps and reached her gently. Viv, he said softly, placing his hand on her back. What happened? She looked into his eyes. They'd weathered so much together, career highs and lows, charity galas, late-night takeout after long flights. But this cut differently. They humiliated me, she said, because I wore sneakers, because I didn't fit their idea of who belongs. Ethan's jaw clenched. His eyes flicked toward the boutique, then back to her. Are you all right? She nodded, though the ache in her chest said otherwise. I didn't cry, she added, but I wanted to. He reached up and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Let's go back, he said simply. She hesitated. Ethan, you don't have to. I know, he interrupted. But I will. Vivian looked at Nina, who offered a small nod as if to say, go show them who you are. Ethan held out his hand. Vivian took it. Together they turned and walked back toward the boutique past gawking shoppers and murmuring staff at neighboring stores who had just begun to realize something was happening. The Dorseys didn't rush. They didn't storm in. But the weight of their presence was undeniable. As they approached the boutique doors, the reflection in the glass showed them walking hand in hand, a man and a woman dressed without pretense, but carrying with them something far more powerful than wealth: dignity, intention, truth. Inside the boutique, the air remained chilly. Brittany stood stiff behind the counter, eyes on her screen, but glancing nervously toward the door every few seconds. Dorian was just returning from the back holding an espresso he hadn't had a chance to sip. When he saw them, his steps faltered. The doors opened, the bell chimed again, but this time there was no ignoring it. Ethan Dorsey entered first, his gaze scanning the room. Vivian walked in beside him, standing tall, her chin lifted just slightly. Brittany blinked, visibly thrown. Dorian's face twitched. He recognized Ethan now, not as a customer, but as the co-owner of Elan et Lumiere, a name often spoken only in boardrooms and press releases. Mr. Dorsey, he said, voice suddenly too bright, too forced. What an unexpected honor. I didn't realize. I'm sure you didn't, Ethan interrupted, his voice level but sharp enough to cut through silk. Vivian didn't speak. She didn't need to. The silence around her said more than any words ever could. Dorian's smile faltered, shrinking under the quiet weight of Ethan's gaze. The manager straightened his jacket reflexively, his hand tightening around the espresso cup until it trembled. Around them, the boutique's curated ambiance, the faint classical music, the soft lighting, the whisper of silk brushing against glass, suddenly felt too loud, too artificial. For the first time all day, the stillness in the room wasn't luxurious. It was tense. Brittany, behind the counter, froze in place. Her fingers hovered over her tablet screen, unsure whether to pretend to work or abandon all pretense. Ethan didn't rush. He moved slowly through the boutique, surveying the room as if committing each corner to memory. Then his voice, low and deliberate, filled the air with a steady, commanding calm. Vivian Dorsey, he began, came here today to purchase a gift for me. A specific piece. She knew what she wanted. She was respectful, thoughtful, clear. No one dared move. She was met with mockery, with dismissiveness. She was redirected, patronized, and ultimately shown the door. Why? No answer. Because of how she dressed, because of her skin color, or because some of you thought she didn't look like someone who belonged here. Ethan turned his full attention to Dorian, his eyes calm but unreadable. You remember escorting her out, don't you? Dorian swallowed. Mr. Dorsey, there's been a misunderstanding. No, Ethan said firmly. There hasn't. He gestured to Vivian, who stood beside him, hands folded in front of her tote bag, the camellia pin on its flap catching the light. This woman is my wife, and she is more than qualified to walk into any boutique on this street. What she experienced here today wasn't just bad service. It was systemic arrogance hiding behind good tailoring. Behind them, two customers put down their champagne flutes. One older man quietly took a step back. Another woman, who had giggled earlier, looked down at her designer heels. Vivian finally spoke, her voice quiet but unwavering. I wasn't upset about the price. I wasn't confused about what I wanted. I was judged the moment I walked in, not on my words, not on my intent, but on how I looked. That judgment turned into exclusion, and that exclusion turned into public humiliation. She paused, steadying her breath. And you did it all with a smile. Dorian, now visibly sweating, cleared his throat. Mrs. Dorsey, I assure you our policies are designed to your policies. Ethan cut in, mean nothing if they're selectively enforced. Tell me, Mr. Vale, how many white customers in jogging clothes have you asked for Financial pre-clearance before showing them a timepiece. Silence. Ethan stepped closer. I know exactly how this company is supposed to operate because I'm not just a name on a shareholder's report. I've built parts of this brand from the ground up. I've funded store expansions, I've hired design consultants, and now I've just witnessed through my wife how easily your culture of curated elegance turns into a practice of thinly veiled discrimination. He turned to face the rest of the room. To the staff standing there watching, some of you laughed. Some of you looked away. And to the customers who found amusement in her pain, I hope you're proud of what that silence bought you. Vivian glanced around. Faces that had once stared at her with disdain now held discomfort, regret, or embarrassment. Here's what will happen now. Ethan continued, his voice hardening slightly. Effective immediately, every employee at this location will be enrolled in a comprehensive anti-bias and dignity training program. That includes management. That includes you, Brittany. The young woman's face drained of color. Furthermore, he added, this incident will be submitted to corporate as a formal case study for reform. And Vivian Dorsey, my wife, will oversee the initiative personally. Gasps whispered through the boutique like wind through trees. Going forward, Ethan said, this program will be known as the Camellia Culture Initiative. It will remind every person who works under this brand that elegance without empathy is nothing but vanity in disguise. Dorian looked as though he might melt into the floor. Vivian took a step forward. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. I came here with joy in my heart, ready to celebrate someone I love. Instead, I was made to feel like a trespasser. But I won't carry that shame, not today, not ever. Her words floated through the air heavier than any designer fragrance. Ethan nodded once, then turned to Dorian again. Now he said quietly, you will retrieve the camellia engraved watch, the one you refused to show her. You will handle it with the care you should have given from the start, and you will wrap it yourself. Dorian moved stiff and robotic toward the back of the boutique. As he disappeared behind the curtain, Brittany remained frozen, eyes glassy. Ethan looked around once more. No one here needs to remember our names, but you will remember this day, because this is the day your silence and your smirks cost you the illusion of superiority. Then he looked at Vivian and offered her his hand again. She didn't hesitate. They stood there together as Dorian returned with the watch, now wrapped in thick cream paper and bound with a ribbon as precise as a contract. He held it out. Vivian took it, her expression unreadable. She didn't say thank you. She didn't need to. The tension in the showroom had shifted from an unspoken pride to palpable shame as Dorian reemerged, the camellia engraved platinum watch cradled reverently in his gloved hands. The case clicked open, revealing the intricate petals spiraling around the dial, each curve a testament to skilled artisanship long gone. Brittany swallowed audibly, her composure shattered. Ethan's steely gaze tracked every motion, no flourish, no hesitation as Dorian placed the watch on a velvet pad and extended it toward Vivian. The collective breath of staff and patrons hovered for a heartbeat, then exhaled in realization that the ostentatious setting had been exposed as a stage for something far darker than high-fashion, systemic exclusion. Vivian laid her fingers gently on the watch face, her touch, both personal and declarative. In that moment, the watch ceased being merely an object. It became a symbol of her restored dignity. The audience shifted uncomfortably, some averted their eyes. Others offered meek nods of apology. No congratulatory murmurs, no triumphant fanfare, just the silent acknowledgement that power, when wielded responsibly, can unmask prejudice and mend a broken space. Ethan stepped forward, his voice calm but resolute as he addressed every individual in that boutique. This watch, he said, was crafted to honor patience and beauty emerging from hardship, much like the camellias that blossom after frost. Today, this place failed to recognize that lesson. He turned to Dorian. Your policies will be rewritten, your staff retrained, and you, monsieur, will personally oversee the first Camellia Culture Initiative workshop next week. Dorian's shoulders slumped in defeat while Brittany's lips quivered. Tears pooled in her eyes as she realized the gravity of her actions. Ethan then faced the remaining employees. You will all attend mandatory sessions on unconscious bias and customer respect. You will learn that every person entering your doors deserves the same care and courtesy, regardless of attire or appearance. The phrase unconscious bias hung in the air like a challenge, daring each person present to confront their own assumptions. No one argued, no one laughed. The crystal lights above flickered gently as if signaling a new beginning. As the hours passed, word of the Dorsey's intervention rippled beyond Elane Lumiere's glass facade. Nearby store managers peered in open windows, colleagues exchanged hurried texts, and by evening social media buzzed with first-hand accounts. Billionaire couple demands justice at Rodeo Drive boutique. Yet in that showroom, a quiet transformation unfolded. Dorian approached Vivian, voice trembling but sincere, and offered the watch box with both hands. Mrs. Dorsey, I am deeply sorry for the way you were treated. I failed you and my team. Please accept this as a gesture of my personal commitment to change. Vivian nodded, accepting his apology with measured grace, then turned to Ethan. His eyes conveyed pride not in power but in principle. Together they walked to the door, the watch secured in its velvet chamber, a small victory encased in luxury. Outside, dusk had softened the sky. The air carried the faint scent of camellia blossoms from the same hedge where Vivian had paused earlier. Passers-by slowed as the couple emerged hand in hand. Among them, Nina Rosenthal stepped forward, applauding softly. Others followed suit, clapping in genuine support. For a fleeting moment, strangers united in recognition that one act of courage can reverberate beyond the moment of confrontation. Ethan raised his free hand in a gentle wave, and Vivian offered a warm, tender smile to the gathering crowd. No speeches, no grand declarations, just the unspoken message that justice served quietly can resonate loudly. As they climbed into the waiting SUV, the hum of engines and click of camera shutters faded, replaced by a collective sense of possibility that with dignity and resolve, even the most exclusive halls can learn to bloom with empathy. Part 5. As the last sliver of daylight faded behind the palm-lined boulevard, Vivian and Ethan stepped from the SUV's open door onto the warm pavement, their hands still intertwined like two roots entwined beneath the soil of change. The camellia-engraved watch lay securely in Vivian's tote, a quiet reminder of a battle both personal and universal. Walkers paused, some offering nods of respect. A few whispered into phones, capturing the moment for screens beyond Rodeo Drive. The air still smelled of gardenias, but now there was an undercurrent of possibility. Vivian released Ethan's hand for a moment and gently nuzzled the watch, its petals glinting under a streetlight. She thought of frost and flowers of resilience born in cold hardship. Beside her, Ethan watched the boutique's glittering facade reflect the twilight like a mirror to its own shame and redemption. He slipped an arm around her shoulders. "We did what we had to," he said softly. Vivian leaned into him. "We planted seeds," she replied, voice steady. A gentle breeze stirred the camellia blossoms above petals, drifting down like whispered promises. They moved toward the corner cafe where dim lighting and leather chairs awaited a sanctuary for reflection. Across the street, Elane Lumiere's windows remained aglow, now empty of smug smirks and judgmental stares, instead lit by the memory of one commanding presence that refused to bow. Passers-by pointed and murmured, "Did you see her strength?" He stood up for her dignity. Finally, someone spoke up. The Dorseys reached the cafe, drawing close to a vinyl booth where they had shared late-night coffees after charity galas and board meetings. Ethan flagged a waiter and ordered chamomile tea with honey for Vivian and espresso for himself. They sat side by side, shoulders touching, feeding warmth back into chilled hearts. Vivian traced the watch's petals with a fingertip, remembering each moment: Brittany's scorn, Dorian's dismissal, Nina's solace, Ethan's calm fury. She realized that dignity wasn't a gift conferred by others. It was reclaimed in every refusal to bow. Ethan reached across the table, brushing a stray petal from the watch's face. "You were the camellia today," he said with a small smile. "Delicate to some, but blooming where it matters." Vivian closed her eyes, savoring the moment's quiet power. They sat in companionable silence as the streetlights flickered on, bathing the sidewalk in honeyed light. In the distance, the boutique's doors closed for the night. Inside, staff prepared for tomorrow's training, the seed of change stirring beneath polished marble floors. Neither Vivian nor Ethan needed to speak further. Their presence, their love, and their combined resolve had planted something that would need nurturing but would not be easily uprooted. In the hush of the evening, under a sky turning from lavender to indigo, they finished their drinks and rose as one. Outside, they paused beneath a camellia tree illuminated by a lamplight. Vivian inhaled deeply, tasting honey gardenia and hope. "It's up to them now," Ethan whispered. She nodded, tapping the camellia pin at her tote. "May they learn to water what they planted." Hand in hand, they walked down Rodeo Drive, two figures, leaving footprints for others to follow, stepping into a world where dignity blooms in even the thorniest places. As we draw the story to a close, slow your pace and let your breath settle, feeling the weight of each word linger like petals, drifting on a gentle breeze. The tale of Vivian and Ethan is more than a confrontation in a luxury boutique. It is a mirror reflecting our own capacity for judgment and for empathy. In every corridor of power and every doorway of privilege, unseen walls can rise between people. Yet just as a camellia can push through frost to reveal its delicate beauty, our choices can break down those barriers. Remember that indignity inflicted on another is an invitation to respond with kindness and courage. When you witness injustice, whether in a boardroom, a neighborhood store, or an online comment section, ask yourself, will I stand silent or will I plant a seed of change? True worth blossoms within hearts brave enough to act, and even one moment of standing up for dignity can ripple outward, inspiring others to water the garden of justice. As you go about your day tomorrow, carry this story with you like a token. Notice the small injustices, a harsh word, a dismissive glance, and choose compassion instead. Speak up gently, offer support, and believe in the power of quiet strength. Because every barrier we dismantle, every voice we empower, cultivates a world where no one feels like an outsider. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it and drop a comment below about a time you saw dignity bloom in unexpected places. Until next time, take care and remember, justice begins with you and with the courage to let empathy flourish.